In a world where magic weaves through every breath of life, Eldrin, the supreme arcanist, walked as a living legend. His name was whispered by the winds in distant realms, a symbol of arcane power and unparalleled wisdom. But as centuries passed, what was once a glorious melody turned into a somber lament, buried deep in the sands of time. The kingdom of Eldoria, once a bastion of civilization, now trembled under the threat of an emerging darkness. Shadowy beings, nameless creatures, began infiltrating the kingdom's borders, spreading chaos wherever they went. The castle walls, which had withstood countless invasions, began to crumble, and terror gripped the populace. The kingdom's advisors, fearing the imminent end, scoured ancient texts for a solution. It was then that they found mentions of Eldrin, the supreme arcanist, in forgotten tomes, describing him as the only hope against the forces now ravaging the world. But Eldrin had vanished centuries ago, his fate shrouded in mystery. In a final, desperate attempt, the king of Eldoria assembled the bravest and wisest of his kingdom. Among them were Kaelan, a young mage of promising talent, Lyria, a warrior whose courage was matched only by her skill with a sword, and Thorn, a ranger whose tracking abilities were legendary. The mission was clear but daunting: find Eldrin and bring him back to the kingdom, no matter the cost. But the location of the mage was cloaked in mystery. Legend said he had exiled himself to the lands of Shadowdeep, a place where time warped and magic grew volatile. The journey to Shadowdeep was treacherous. As the group ventured through ancient forests and steep mountains, nature itself seemed to turn against them. The trees whispered secrets of ages past, and the cold wind carried macabre laughter. Every step was a battle against the elements and their own sanity. But the group, driven by the need to save their home, pressed on. After days that felt like weeks, the group finally reached the heart of Shadowdeep, where a crumbling tower stood like a finger pointing at the sky. There, they found Eldrin. But the man they expected to see, full of power and majesty, was now a pale shadow of his former self. Eldrin's once lustrous hair was now a tangled mass of silver threads. His skin, wrinkled and pale, seemed almost translucent, and his eyes, once vibrant, were now deep wells of sorrow and regret. He refused to help them, insisting that his time had passed and that what he could offer wouldn't be enough to stop the darkness. But Kaelan, Lyria, and Thorn did not give up. They pleaded, reminding Eldrin of his ancient oath to protect the kingdom at all costs. Lyria challenged him, saying that a mage's true strength lies not just in power, but in heart. It was their courage, and perhaps a glimmer of hope that Eldrin didn't know he still had, that finally convinced him to leave his exile. Eldrin, still hesitant, began to revive his arcane abilities. In his tower, he had kept artifacts and ancient tomes that held forgotten arcane secrets. As Eldrin reread the texts and whispered ancient words of power, the tower trembled with the magic returning to the world. Kaelan watched in awe, mentally taking notes, knowing he was witnessing something that modern magic books could never capture. However, Eldrin also knew that his strength alone would not be enough. He would need the help of the old gods, forces he hadn't invoked since the mistake that had cursed him. The risk was enormous, for these entities were not controlled by mortal will, and one misstep could bring even greater disaster. With Eldrin leading the group, they set out from Shadowdeep to face the growing darkness. Each step toward the kingdom felt heavier than the last, as if the world itself was trying to prevent them from reaching their destination. As they neared Eldoria, signs of destruction became evident: decimated villages, ravaged fields, and the air thick with the presence of evil. The final confrontation took place in the kingdom's capital, where the shadow creatures had gathered around an arcane portal, a rift in reality threatening to consume everything. Eldrin, now once again in tune with his power, raised his hands and began to weave spells as old as the world itself. But the corrupted entity he faced was not just a creature, it was a manifestation of his own past failure, a shadow of the power he had lost. The battle was epic, the sky tearing with thunder, and the earth trembling under the impact of the arcane energies unleashed. In the decisive moment, Eldrin realized that he could not defeat the entity without a great sacrifice. He knew that to save the kingdom, he would have to renounce the little humanity he had left. With one final spell, he merged with the entity, neutralizing its threat but at the cost of his own existence. The portal was sealed, the shadows dissipated, and peace returned to the kingdom. But Eldrin was no longer there to see the result. His sacrifice ensured that the kingdom survived, and his legend was finally restored to greatness. The people of Eldoria erected a statue in his honor, and his name was etched into the annals of history, not as the mage who fell, but as the arcanist who rose to save all.